Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending. It looks like we have a full house, which is fantastic. So we'll kind of get started and then so we can keep on track with our time schedule. So my name is Colleen Smith. I'm a graduate from IHN. I graduated in 2013, and I've been working with IHN for about 9 years. I am the head administrator for the Ontario campuses and the online Eastern. So I just want to welcome you all to this webinar. I'm excited to host Sofia. She's got a fantastic webinar for you today. So Sofia's webinar today is on Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, which is a condition that is on the rise. This webinar is an excerpt from her upcoming workshop, The Extracellular Matrix and Lymphatic System in Health, with a diagnosis and disease with an emphasis on mold exposure. So this one, there's a few key things that Sofia will be covering in this workshop, like mold toxicity, chronic reaction to pathogens, skin irritation, what is MCAS and how to recognize it in your clients. So Sofia is the founder of Sofia Elenia Health, which is an evidence-based clinical practice. She's been teaching with IHN for more than 15 years and has over 13 years of teaching experience and is really a wealth of knowledge. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Sofia now so she can introduce herself before she does the webinar.
Thank you, Colleen. Hi, everybody. So again, some of you know me very well because you're my students. Some other people never heard of me or maybe never heard of me talking. So last year I started doing, finally, after so many people asked me, I started doing some webinars, and there are more to come, very interesting ones this year, and courses early next semester as well. So I'm going to go into just the meat and potatoes of what I'm talking about today. I think it's this, even if you don't come to the workshops or whatever, if you don't continue with this idea, this is a small part actually from a very, very big talk about mold and about many other things. But I think mast cell activation system, you have to know about it if you're a practitioner. And some years ago, I got into it because I just happened to have some clients who I had no clue at some point what else to do with them. I applied everything, all my knowledge for years and years, and I've never seen anything like that in my practice. And for the last few years, I realized that, you know what, we have a lot more people than in the past with mast cell activation system. And you will see that probably you will recognize some of your clients, and maybe, I hope not, but maybe some of your, family members as well. It's not as some years ago, I realized it's very, very, it's in the practice, but many times we don't recognize it. And we just deal with them as, oh, this particular person has an allergy or has a leaky gut, but it's much more than that. So if you don't know the steps into going into it and the steps of where to start or where to end, you may have you may have success for maybe a month, 2 months, they feel better. And then they either go back or they're just stuck in where they were at that point, or maybe 2 months after that. So I hope it's going to help. I know it's going to help you in your practice. I know it is. I'm not hoping, but I know it will. It will. So I'm prepared today to give you a lot of knowledge, a lot of practical knowledge. So it's a free webinar, but you're going to get a lot of stuff coming out of it, right? So prepare. I hope you prepared some paper, and maybe we're going to do some handouts after that. I don't know. There's the 2 handouts that I talk about. Maybe I have time to go through them, and we'll see. And I hope you're going to have some questions there. And hopefully I'm going to have some answers for you. So I'm just going to go into it. So mast cell activation syndrome, an increasingly more prevalent condition in our practice. Let's see. Okay. And please tell me, Colleen, if I don't see it or if I don't see it moving at some point. So what in this particular 1-hour webinar, we will discuss what that mast cell activation system is. And you will see it in my slides, just a short description of MCAS and how to recognize it in your clients, or how to recognize it in your practice. Otherwise, if you don't recognize it, it's useless information, right? A picture of the body's systemic response affecting practically every organ in the system. So we'll see that we're not talking here about simple allergy or itis or eyes, sleeping, or whatever. One genetic mutation that some of you may have that predisposes one to this mast cell activation syndrome, and I have some clients with them actually. I don't have it, but I have some clients with them. Protocol strategies including diet, lifestyle, and loads of supplementation. So I have quite a few slides there to pick and choose from. I'm going to tell you what I use in predilection in my practice, whatnot. And you have lots of information there. A short description of the following workshop, and some Q&A after that. And I know that Colleen has some information for you as well at the end. So another spiky thing. So this is the mast cell that literally speeds out some of that histamine and some of those mediators that we're going to talk about. So just a reminder for you what mast cells are. I'm pretty sure all of you are, especially if you're practicing. You know that mast cells are cells found in the connective tissue throughout our bodies as part of our immune system. And it's part of the reaction of our immune system. And sometimes it reacts too much, particularly prominent in tissues of the bodies that interact with external world. So anything that, either comes in through the mouth, or the ears, or whatever. It's the digestive tract, it's the respiratory tract, skin as well. But it also can be found, I wrote that with red, not because it's the most important, all of the information is important, but this is something that I was not aware of before some years ago, before I got into this mast cell activation syndrome more into detail. That can also be found in organs and tissues of the circulatory system. And yes, you can end up literally from this, if it's going on for some time, you can end up with atherosclerosis, you can end up with high blood pressure and so on. And the nervous system as well, affecting the really, really interesting conditions or degenerative conditions like Parkinson's, like, even bipolar disorders and so on. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later with some examples. The mast cells play active role in protecting our health by providing a line of defense against pathogens. So pathogens are coming, and mast cells that they can speed out like literally substances that kill those pathogens. But unfortunately, sometimes these mast cells do a little bit more than what their job is. So what's the mechanism of action there? When exposed to perceived pathogens, and the key word there is perceived, because sometimes they shouldn't react to them. Mast cells that offer rapid inflammatory response to get rid of invaders. So the invaders that regularly they should be activated to are germs, viruses, organs, germs, viruses, and parasites. Mast cells have the capacity to directly kill these organisms. Mast cells play a prominent role in activation of allergy response, and this is the part that you really don't want to happen. When a person has an allergy, mast cells are responding to harmless triggers, like pollen, for instance, something, somebody, maybe it's not so harmless, but somebody with perfume, for instance, just passes by you and you're like totally break on your highs or whatever. So the trigger as if they were a threat. In response to a perceived threat, mast cells trigger a release of a variety of immune system mediators. We call them mediators, right? In medical communities, they call mediators. And at least two of them. You heard about them. We talk about them at school. We talk about them. Think about them in your practice. The histamine and those cytokines. In the last 3 years, probably the COVID and so on, talking about it, you've heard a lot about these inflammatory cytokines. It's not only the cytokines, there are some other things like serotonin disruption and also enzymes, not only cytokines, but proteases as well. So all of these things are bringing out all those reactions in the body that we know and reactions that we don't see actually. So the circulatory reaction or, a blood vessel reaction, not going to see it, but unfortunately is going to have repercussions later on. So we're talking here about a systemic body response. It's not only like, oh, the eyes are getting weepy when I eat wheat or when I do dairy, something like, maybe my bowels do not digest well. We're talking here about all the systems or majority of the systems of the body involved when we talk about mast cell activation syndrome. Both in chronically inflammatory response syndrome. So this is something that there are two phrases here that some of you not know what I'm talking about, but I have a point with that, so just bear with me. Chronically inflammatory response, CRRS, is something that we talk about a lot when we talk about mold and when we talk about the sick house syndrome, which is part of the bigger kind of workshop that I do. But also mold toxicity. So both of these, any body system, and usually more than one system, is involved in systemic inflammation, is present, exactly like in this case of the Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. So many times these, to be even more confusing, these two can be simultaneously present, and usually they are when we are talking about the CRS or we're talking about mold toxicity. Not necessarily when we just talk about Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, the other one may not be valid or happening. When diet, lifestyle, and supplementation are considered for that chronic inflammatory response syndrome or mold toxicity, practitioners should first, and this is where I want to get, first should ensure that systemic response and Mast Cell Activation Syndrome is not present. Because otherwise, if you go directly to attack the mold, directly to attack, that house syndrome, sick house syndrome, we call it. And it's not only from the mold, that's from EMFs, it's many other factors there, but mold is one of them. Then you will make it worse usually. So if the mast cells are too active, they're too reactive, there are a few things that are happening. And if you're trying, for instance, and there's some fantastic homeopathics, there's some fantastic tinctures and so on that we use for killing the mold and get rid of the mold in the body, in the house. Then if you don't take care of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome before, you're going to make that person really, you're going to throw them in under the bus, kind of, right? So this is why I put this slide, because there's a connection there. So I always say that something that I learned from one of my mentors, actually, what means open in the case. If Mast Cell Activation Syndrome is present, and if you resolve that, this is going to open the case, meaning that this obstacle that was there in whatever you were trying to do, they're not getting better. This obstacle is taken away, and really it's making possible to finally get to the core of the healing. So in the case of, sorry, I'm playing around this. So in the case of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, systemic body response, there's no definition that everybody agrees on, but everybody agrees on how it's manifesting. And this is kind of the definition that I wrote here. So the condition is described as a chronic multisystem disorder. So it's not only, let's say, cardiovascular system, it's not only the skin inflamed or whatever, it's like multi-system disorder of inappropriate mast cell activation triggers by various stimuli. And the stimuli are very innocent sometimes. Could be just the food that everybody else eats it, but you can't eat it. Can be, again, pollen that we shouldn't really react to. It's part of the nature and so on. Mast cells may be increased in numbers or display of hyperactivity. So it's very interesting that both of these are happening usually. So it's not only that are trigger happy, we call them, right? Those mast cells. It's not like whoa, histamine all the time, and those inflammatory cytokines and proteases and so on. But also, interesting enough, they divide very, very, very fast, and they make themselves like more than what they should be there. So you have not only the hyperactivity, but you have increased number of mast cells. And that in itself, it gives the inappropriate response, and actually the really bad response, and or feeling like crap really, and when you with your health. Beyond avoiding triggers, the best therapy, and we're going to see that in next class when we talk about strategies, what do we do here? Can you avoid triggers? Yeah, you can avoid the wheat, you can avoid the dairy or whatever else to trigger. Maybe it's a pineapple, maybe it's something else that everybody else eats it in your family, but you can't eat it. But you can't avoid going outside, or you shouldn't, mainly, right? So you can't avoid things that are part of our daily life. So the best response, the best therapy, or best strategy there to modulate the response. So modulate the mast cell activation and the effects of those mediators that I talked about. So that's histamine, the heparin, protease, hydrolases, pro-inflammatory cytokines. And so they have different names there, medical names and so on. So there are two things that you will see that we do. Avoiding triggers, yeah, we talk about that I'm going to talk about that in diet and specific diet for mast cell activation syndrome for a while until the body calms down, and lifestyle things to do. But the supplementation is really focusing on modulating the mast cell activation, so the function of mast cells, and stabilizing the response and the effects of those mediators. And I cite for every one of them just to see that I'm not really getting it out of my belly here, what I'm saying. There are quite a few papers, scientific papers on these. And I cite some of them that are very, very fresh. This one, for instance, it's from an Italian journal of medicine, Medicina it's called, and it was published in 2021. So it's very, very fresh. There's a lot of awareness now in mast cell activation syndrome in the medical community too. Not necessarily in your doctor, your family doctor, not yet. It's not so mainstream. But I see that, at least in Europe, I talked to a few people who going through or went through the medical school, and they did learn at school and the medical school about it. So it's good that it's out there. The second one also is 2021, and this is from a journal of gastroenterology. Because we have in gastroenterology, we have some problems there too, but you're going to see later on when I cite some of the examples. So what are the clinical symptoms? How do you as a practitioner recognize this? Because it's not a specific test. That makes it a little bit harder. It's not like, okay, do this blood test. Or do the, yeah, there are some blood tests, by the way, that can show you they have high histamine levels and so on. But it's very easy to recognize it in these clinical symptoms, we call them. Inflammation. And yes, you see the inflammation markers in the blood. You can ask that to, for your client to do that with their family doctor. Allergic type of responses. So have allergies to most of the people with mast cell activation syndrome. Literally, there are people who are they're allergic to so many foods, to some environmental triggers. Sometimes they don't even know what to do anymore, right? So those type of allergic responses. And non-specific symptoms, meaning not necessarily linked to allergies, ranging from cardiovascular disease, like high blood pressure, for instance, low blood pressure, and all kind of things. They're related to cardiovascular disease, gastrointestinal, and I'm going to cite a few of them later on. Dermatological, so anything from hives to whatever, scratches, eczemas, to even like a redness or flustered face, for instance, like really, really interesting stuff. And respiratory system, which of course you can see even much easier, like asthma and so on. Sometimes symptoms overlap with chronic diseases and disorders. For instance, somebody who has a lung disease, a mycoplasma, whatever, right? So they will have shortness of breath. Somebody has other diseases, actually, cancers of the skin or whatever it is. Then you're going to see these overlapping symptoms. Infections as well. Some, for instance, parasitic infections, bacterial infections of the gut and so on, they may give you the same clinical symptoms. So it makes it harder to diagnose. But again, look at the clusters, look at the multisystemics. It's not only gastrointestinal system, it's not only this and that, it's a multisystemic approach. And again, some of the things that are mentioned in international and some of the North American scientific papers there and journals about that. And again, there's some in this particular one, 2020, is citing actually even some lab tools in clinical practice to review. There's some inflammatory markers, histaminic markers, and so on. Some of the examples that you can think about in your practice, and yeah, inflammation is easy to see. Inflammation of the skin, inflammation of the body, for instance, pain and aches, that's inflammation, right? There's no pain without inflammation. But some of the other examples, for instance, cases can range from mild to life-threatening anaphylaxis. And I do work with clients, even very young ones, with anaphylaxis, very serious anaphylaxis, and that repeats every few weeks or few months. And for sure, I know that that's mast cell activation. So somebody has anaphylaxis and that's repeated, and you know what, they walk around with EpiPen, that's 100% mast cell activation syndrome. Possible involvement of mast cells and their mediators in neurogenesis. So this is an example in what can happen with crossing actually that BBBs, the blood-brain barrier, and their role in neural disorders such as cerebral ischemia, traumatic brain injury. And again, traumatic brain injury is not coming from this, it's the other way around. So if somebody has a traumatic brain injury, whatever, sports or whatever they play, head trauma and so on, and then you will see them with the mast cell activation syndrome. Neuropathic pain, multiple sclerosis. This is very interesting. I do have two clients right now, multiple sclerosis, and I had them in the past. So that's a very interesting thing to see this is happening there. Alzheimer's disease, migraines. It's absolutely like most of the people have that. If they have migraines all the time, if they're not hormonal, even if they're hormonal, they may be related to mast cell activation. Autism, 100%. I work with autism kids. 100% of them have mast cell activation syndrome. Depression as well, many times. Look at bipolar, look at any kind of neurological disorder, because that brain barrier, blood-brain barrier, it's crossed actually. There's inflammation in the brain. This is another study. This is something in a Scandinavian country. I can't remember, I read it, but I can't remember where it's from, but muscle and neuroinflammation and brain disorders. This is published 2017, so it's a fresh one. Another one on the bottom here in the European Journal of Pharmacology, 2019. Mast cells participate in innate response in the central nervous system that occur during neuroinflammatory phenomena, including migraines. So whenever you have somebody with migraines, you look into that as well. So especially if you can correlate with some other, environmental or digestive problems, environmental or food intolerances or allergies, then you can bet that mast cell activation syndrome is happening. So look deeper into that. Other symptoms or other manifestations are examples. This one is published in 2021, so really with neurogastroenterology journal in a large US database encompassing more than 53 million patients. Over 20 years they were followed. Patients with IBS are at least 4 times more likely to have mast cell activation syndrome than general population. So again, it's like IBS. It's not just, it's not only the leaky gut and this and that, the nervous system reacting, but where's that nervous system reacting from? What is it happening there? It's much more than, the adrenals and the nervous system and the stress and all that stuff with some people, IBS. Not all of them, but some people. The second one is not only IBS, right? Not irritable bowel syndrome only, but also in IBDs. So this one was published in 2005 in the World Journal of Gastroenterology. And this is happening, there are a few, there's not only one, but there are a few Chinese researchers. Histamine plays a role not just in allergic conditions, but also in IBD, so inflammatory bowel diseases. That means in ulcerative colitis, you have a client with that. You have a client with Crohn's. Majority of my clients with Crohn's, even if I did not know anything about mast cell activation syndrome back then, now, like thinking about it, I realized that, that was mast cell activation syndrome. And that's why sometimes you don't have really good results if you don't do what I'm going to tell you today, what I'm going to talk about today. So this is how, I'm not sure if this is big enough for you to see. Can I make it bigger? Yeah. And there you go. So this is how, when we talk about multi-system involvement, this is actually what multi-system involvement means. Like literally, you see their bone marrow even. Increased mast cells production by bone marrow can lead to mastocytosis. Mastocytosis means that the growth of mast cells, a lot of mast cells, right? Histamine release also, is it just histamine? Not only one of the many mediators are there, only one of them does all this stuff. Gastric acid release, so gastrointestinal problems like nausea, stomach aches, bloating, cramping, constipations, loose stools. So, the stuff, the signs of IBS here, leaky gut, food sensitivities, gut flora imbalance, Crohn's disease, and so on. And again, we know that there's also colitis as well, Crohn's. Menstrual problems, estrogen metabolism, with everything to do with PMS, dysmenorrhea, pelvic pain, endometriosis, all that stuff. Respiratory, all right, from nasal congestion, runny nose, and so on, to bronchoconstriction, inability to breathe properly, wheezing, dyspnea, so inability to breathe deep, and so on. Skin, itchy, flushing, all that stuff, that, inflammation, and so on. Cardiovascular, this is a very interesting one. For me, it was very interesting. The hypertension could be because of that. And it's very interesting that I have some clients that I help now, and I did in the past some others, and I have somebody in my family actually has, from time to time, has very high blood pressure. And I link it at some point, I realized, oh my God, this is mast cell activation syndrome. It's not like all the time. It's not the atherosclerosis. All the testing that showed no cardiovascular disease. So where is it coming from? Every time it's exposed to something that's high histamine release, that blood pressure is going up like crazy. I'm talking 160 per 100 or even higher than that, right? So again, think about that to tachycardia, like arrhythmia of the heart. More than that, headaches, central nervous system, depression, anxiety, irritability, and so on. You can read the whole thing here. Vasodilation, orthostasis, when you have when you're kind of dizzy when you get up. And yeah, that's not only from adrenals. Adrenals can do that too with adrenals, but not only from that. So again, there's a lot of neurodegenerative, neurotransmitter changes as well. So think about serotonin, think about depression, and so on. So literally every system in the body is not attacked necessarily, but it's involved into that, right? So think about it. Maybe not everything is happening at the same time in your client, but it's going to have at least 2 or 3 of these systems as well. It's not going to be only one system that is happening. And it's a pretty picture. I love this drawing. And this is exactly how a muscle looks like, actually. And this is histamine released by it. Kind of pretty, but pretty deadly for some people. Treatment protocol strategies. So which is, before talking about supplementation, what are the strategies to think about when you see a client, you think or you're certain that that's mast cell activation syndrome? So first of all, evaluate what activities the mast cells activates the mast cells for an individual client. So there are a lot of things that may be common, but you really have to individualize the response or the treatment, the protocol for each client. It's going to be very different from one person to the other one. And could be even different from, if they're not treated properly, could be different, like one month you react to this, next month you react to something else, and so on. Daily journaling. This is something that I'm not sure about you, if you ask that from your client, but I'm struggling with this for some of my clients that really don't want to do that. And I'm trying to find psychological way to entice them to do that. Daily journaling for us as practitioners, absolutely crucial. It's a gold mine there to be mined, right? Daily journaling about food, beverages intake, activities, reactions, physical and mental. Very, very important. Not only physical, oh, I had 5 today, whatever. Maybe you don't have that at all, but maybe you have some mental stuff happening. Identify and avoid environmental triggers. So again, that maybe, you're a dentist, and every time you use, I don't know what you use there, like a chemical for your, in your dentistry, it just came to mind because I talked to my dentist and she reacts to something, but and maybe that's a trigger for you, right? Or in your workplace, or in your environment when you live at home. You live with somebody who uses chemicals at the time, right? Do you react to those? Identify and avoid dietary triggers. So that's a must, at least at the beginning and for a while. Support mast cell structural integrity. So other than take out the triggers, because you can't take them all to begin with, the mast cell structural integrity, we're talking here about membrane cell membrane support, is absolutely number 1 thing that you have to do. And I'm going to show you how to do that with some supplementation. Very easy to do. Support a healthy immune response by modulating the immune response. So not boosting the immune response. That's the ultimate thing, not the ultimate, but the one thing that you do not want to, because it's already super active, that immune response. If you stimulate it even more, you're going to end up with an autoimmune disease if they don't have it already. So modulate immune response. There are specific supplements that we use for that, and I'm pretty sure that some of you know already what. Lower systemic inflammation with fluids and supplementation. So these are the big three: membrane integrity, modulating immune system, low inflammation. Also, some people, and some of you maybe even have a genetic predisposition to that. So there's a SNP, there's that genetic glitch that you're born with. This is referring to DAO, we call it. So it's the enzyme diamine oxidase. So some people don't have that, so don't have enough of that. So that enzyme is the one that our body's natural to our body, and it breaks down the histamine. And if you don't have that, if you don't need enough of that, the histamine is going to linger into your body. It's going to even accumulate if you're exposed to a lot of this histaminic fluids, for instance, right? The dirty DAO, we call it. I have a questionnaire for that. I'm not sure. I'm going to ask Colleen how we do to send to people who showed up today. And it's a link to, by the way, it's not a link. It is from, I've modified it a little bit to more practical. It is from this particular book by Dr. Ben Lynch, Dirty Genes. Some of you who've done the Dirty Genes. It's the best book on genetic mutations or SNPs that really you can do something about. So that's where that is coming from. And you do that questionnaire if you score really high on that one. It's like absolute, there's no question you have that. Or you can just test it. I tested myself for some years ago, and I have some very interesting and not deadly, but interesting genetic mutations that I have to deal with for the rest of my life. Maybe you have them too. 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, there's two that do that. You have to upload your raw data. It's coming. You're not going to understand anything out of it because it's going to be some numbers and some letters and nothing else. And I usually tell people to go pay the money and go to Strategy Report from Seeking Health. That's seekinghealth.com. That's Dr. Ben Lynch's website. So I learned from him. I've done with him a few courses. I learned from him. I've done the course Genetic Mutations too. There's a really good course there. But you can, if you download in that report, yeah, you're going to pay a little bit of money. It's not a lot. And it's going to give you really good information about genes that you have to do something with. So DAO is going to be there if you have it, or if you don't have it. Diet. So other than supplementation, we talk about diet and lifestyle. Diet and then antihistamine diet or low histamine diet is called both ways. And again, I have a handout of that. Maybe a lot of you have that already and you use it. I hope you use it in your practice. Because that has to be followed for at least, I would say, for at least a half a year to a year. For somebody who has an anaphylactic shock or had it before, especially a few times, I would follow that for at least a year until the body's healed, until we do all the supplementation and healing that has to take place. So in 2019, for instance, a study published in 2019, a study found that a significant increase in serum DAO levels of that enzyme was found in patients with strict or occasional even low histamine diet compliance. So it's literally scientifically, we know that that enzyme goes up. So that means that breaking down more of the histamine if you're following that particular diet. And it's not so restricted as you may think. Maybe it's not your favorite foods, but it's not so restricted. You have to what you eat. Lifestyle and reduce psychological stress. That's interesting that yes, stress is linked to inducing mast cell activation. So if you have it already, mast cells are going to go crazy every time you're stressed out. And I put some ideas here that you know as practitioners already: yoga, meditation, exercise. 2 courses that my clients and myself, I've done both these courses. A good program actually recently, a mindfulness-based stress reduction course many years ago. They're very beneficial for me. So again, this scientifically, we know that reducing the stress, working on stress levels, reduces actually manifestation of this mast cell activation syndrome. All that said, histamine is not all bad. You have to understand we have to have histamine. Yeah, it's like the cortisol, right? I always make an analogy to that. Like you have high cortisol levels, low cortisol levels is not good. Either very high or very low, it's not good. Like you cannot live with one, you cannot live with the other one for too long. Histamine is the same way. So we do need histamine for gut motility. Helps so if it's too much, obviously you have diarrhea and so on, but it helps gut motility. Helps the stomach to secrete acids it needs for digestion. It reacts to pathogenic invaders. It's a neurotransmitter that affects thought and emotion. So really we need a little bit of histamine, but not too much histamine to get into what we call the muscle activation. Then you can be born with that DAO, right, with the DEX gene, with a glitch in the gene, but you can make it dirty. And I love Dr. Bench's Lynch book, again, Dirty Genes. He's not paying me, by the way, to advertise that, but it's a really, really cool book. I read it over and over again. He explains it very well that you don't have to be born with a glitch like the DAO. You can dirty it by what you do. So how can you dirty it or overwhelm it? Well, first of all, to eat way too many high histamine containing foods or liquids. I'm going to give you one example that a lot of us do. So you cook, let's say you don't have to cook during the week and so on. You cook a lot of it in big batch on the weekend and you eat the whole week. That's absolutely deadly for people with high histamine release. Doesn't matter what the food is, even vegetables that are not high histamine foods usually, or some of them are actually, but let's say they're not high histamine foods to begin with. If they sit in the fridge for more than a day, they're going to become a very high histamine foods. Another example that I love to eat, I love to make all kind of foods from it, minced meat. Minced meat is absolutely deadly for somebody who has high histamine, right? And a lot of other examples. Leaky gut. It makes the DAO dirty, so it lowers that enzyme, so you can't break down histamine. Not only that, but increasing the permeability of the intestine, you end up with a lot more triggers. Poor digestion, there's another one other than leaky gut, so sometimes they happen at the same time. So low hydrochloric acid, pancreatic enzymes, bile, microbiome is not there. And attention here that, people receive, obviously you don't give them fermented foods, or you don't give them probiotics, but specifically Lactobacillus acidophilus, any Lactobacillus species of bacteria are all high histamine food. So let's say you get a yogurt, which is an organic yogurt, best in the world. You're reacting like crazy because of a high histamine food. Also, probiotics that contain Lactobacillus acidophilus or Lactobacillus species. Food allergies, an acidic diet, high protein diet, so high meats. Meats are very high in histamine, by the way, especially beef. Gluten and gliadin, right? Pathogens. Some cause histamine release, and others make histamine themselves. So majority of the parasites, by the way, moles make histamine as well. Emotional and mental stress. I talked about that for women. Pay attention. Estrogen dominance, high histamine release, and this is the one of the 2 or 3 causes of what actually maybe this is the main cause. If you had any woman client as a woman and had became literally out of it, right? Then neurologically out of it. Neurologically, she could not, like anxiety very high, even getting in the hospital when the high estrogen hits, like at the middle of the cycle, right? You have right before ovulation or ovulation time. This is because of high histamine release. So look at what else. Does she have this mast cell activation syndrome? Probably she has. I remember I had a client that before she came to see me, she said, you know what? Every month I get in the hospital for neurological issues. I cannot control myself. And she did have mast cell activation syndrome. So for the time that is left here, let's go through some supplementation, because I know that some of you are going to write it down, and some of you will want to see this or want to know, okay, this is happening. I recognize it's happening. What do I do now? So we were talking about digestion, very, very, very important, right? So digestion is emetic support. So not only the stuff that we usually give, hydrochloric acid, biothacoric acid, whatever they need, but also this diamine oxidase. Yeah, that enzyme is coming into as a supplement. And in the meantime, actually, I forgot to take it out. In the meantime, I should phone them again to see if they put it in. But in the meantime, Allergy Research Group, unfortunately, where I was getting it from, they don't have that anymore. And it was my number one source. And unfortunately, that's not valid anymore. But they don't make it. The only other source that I found that is doable here in Canada is Histamine Blog by Dr. Ben Lynch. So he has all kind of supplements. The unfortunate thing with that is that, first of all, it's from porcine kidney. So it's from pig. So some of my clients, Muslim descendants, or some other clients who do not, from religious reasons or whatever other reasons, they don't eat pork, they don't want pork in their body, they cannot have that. But also, it's a little bit expensive for us Canadians to bring it from USA, that particular one. Again, I hope that I told him once to put it on Amazon or something to do something to make it available to us. But that's one source. Number two, support mast cell structural integrity. So we talked in the strategy about the most important thing is to have stabilize the cell membrane of those mast cells. And it's important to understand that if you don't stabilize the cell membrane only of the mast cells when you do these supplements, you stabilize the membrane cells of all the cells out there. So the cell structure is going to be, you see that cell destruction is going to be reversed, right? So the cell membrane, the cells that are really, they're dying before their term, or they can be, the mitochondria can be destroyed because the cell membrane is not sturdy enough and so on. You're going to resolve that with these supplements. It's not only the mast cell they're going to be resolved. So high DHEA, usually I don't do DHEA only, I do EPA as well, just because the manifestation of Mast Cell Activation Syndrome many times with, all kind of allergies, the skin issues and so on, that EPA is good as well. But in this particular case, what the science tells us, what the tests that were done, you have to do very high level of DHA, about 6. I usually do 5 to 6 grams a day. Even 4 grams a day works for a lot of people. And it helps to repair that blood-brain barrier. So you heard about the brain, leaky brain, right? Leaky gut, leaky brain. This is kind of what we're talking about here, right? You have a leaky brain. Phosphatidylcholine, I always use this. Best in liposomal form or IV, but I use, what's it called? Pure PC. I use Pure PC from Design from Health. I'm not sure why I didn't write it here. Let's add it here. So Pure PC from Designs for Health. And most of you probably have an account with the Design for Health. I buy quite a few supplements from them, and they have a warehouse in Toronto as well, so it's easy to get, or Vancouver, wherever you are, it's easy to get. So make sure that when you open an account, you open the account with Canada, a Canadian account. I opened an account with USA first, and I had to do it again. So Pure PC is not liposomal, and obviously it's not a form of IV, but I find it really, really works really well. It's expensive, really expensive. It's about retails about $100 or $80 or $90 for 150 milliliters, 120, I can't remember. But it really works really well. About a teaspoon a day to 3 teaspoons a day, depends. If there's neurological problem, bipolar and so on, you go up. If not, 1 teaspoon a day is quite enough. Mineral salts. So these people are really, really depleted of minerals. So there are some very important ones, but I usually do whole mineral stuff, the liquid. I usually do either physical energetics. That are physical energetics. They have spectral light, and if it's not spectral light, I'm doing. You can find Aussie minerals, and as the name says it, obviously it's from Australia. You find it in Canadian stores now very, very easily, and again, very, very good. either this or physical energetics. I don't use anything else. Pay attention that everything else in the market, it seems it has very high content of heavy metals. So really pay attention what minerals, liquid minerals you get from where. Again, other than the membrane, cell membrane, the very important thing is to modulate that immune response, right? And you probably know you have your own favorites. My favorite is colostrum. So I'm going to say about this, the first one after I talk about colostrum. I use usually Galt Fortifier from Physical Energetics. This one has bovine colostrum and all kind of other things, omega-3, beta-glucans, fish protein, okra, pepsin. So this is amazing to heal the gastrointestinal system, the small intestine, the Peyer's patches. So if the Peyer's patches are destroyed, you react to everything, really. So that has to be healed. Another one from Allergy Research Group, this is still available. It's called lactoferrin with colostrum. So again, colostrum in any colostrum that you buy, it has immunoglobulin, so it's immune system modulating, really good. But also this one has that lactoferrin that is important to as immunomodulatory and antioxidant activity as well. So if you don't have an account with Allergy Research Group, you can open as a practitioner allergyresearchgroup.com, and you can get like a lot less, for the buck or the whatever, a lot more for the same amount. There is another company, if you're not a practitioner yet, is another company that is a sister company for everybody else who's not a practitioner. I'm not going to remember his name now. It's going to come at some point. But you can go to allergyresearchgroup.com or you can phone them and they will tell you on the website, it tells you the name of the other one. You can buy the other stuff I saw it on iHerbs recently actually as well. I'll send it to a client from another country. The first one, I use this one from time to time. It's a pain to bring it from States, Allergy Research Group. They have it sometimes, sometimes they don't have it. The last time I bought it about 2 months ago. It's a homeopathic that I really think it works. And the majority of people feel much better from it. So it's the main thing, it's a form of taurine, Taroxicum Cobot. So again, this is homeopathic. It comes in very, very small pellets, 2 pellets under the tongue early in the day, and that's it. And you give it usually 1 month. Most of the people are going to be okay after that, or just continue until that mast cell activation is still happening. So that's a different way of modulating that response. Lowering the inflammation, antihistaminic stuff. I think you know all of this stuff, so I'm going to go very quickly through it. Quercetin. Pay attention with red people who are intolerant to aspirin, salicylic acid, and generally speaking, salicylic acid or phenols should avoid that because they will react to quercetin. So when I see that, I saw in the last 3 years, that 2 years and a half, that we talking about COVID and COVID stuff and vaccine stuff and so on, and a lot of people were taking quercetin. Some of them were reacting like crazy, and I had some clients who were reacting like that, but they continue taking it. So if you react for it, like, don't take it, right? Always take it, always give it with vitamin C at the same time. They work synergistically much better than alone. I usually get the quercetin bromelain complex because bromelain is anti-inflammatory as well, so they work fantastic together from Douglas Labs. If you're a practitioner, I'm pretty sure you have the Cerol or Atrium now, they're called. You have both of these, quercetin as well, pure quercetin for encapsulation. And then primrose oil, especially if there's a lot of inflammation there, it works on the lowering inflammatory prostaglandins. So it's really cool for, again, there is science behind that calms down those inflammatory prostaglandins. It also helps with anxiety and sleep, because somebody who has mast cell activation syndrome has usually anxiety, has sometimes sleep problems as well. Sometimes pain as well. So high dose, 1,500 milligrams once a day in the evening. Butterbur, one of my favorite ones. If your client has that mast cell activation syndrome with brain fog, anxiety, especially migraines, this is a fantastic tool to really get rid of migraines and headaches, but you have to take it daily, by the way. And this is my favorite one on the market. It has new foods. It's not That's expensive. It has Butterbur and Feverview at the same time. Do not take it sensitive to ragweed. You're going to be sensitive to this, to Feverview. But it really, really works with the histamine release of the headaches, migraines, and it's a very good combination. And again, backed by a lot of research. Again, now foods in Canada, if you're in Canada. Pycnogenolone, another one. So again, this is still about inflammation on his antihistaminic supplementation. Pycnogenolone, potassium, it's a little bit more expensive than the quercetin and the others. It's a fantastic bioflavonoid. We do it. I would do this, especially if that Mast Cell Activation Syndrome, your client has it and has some cardiovascular disease as well. Fantastic for any kind of cardiovascular disease, inflammation in cardiovascular system, even high blood pressure and so on. This is a pine bark extract. It's a good choice when quercetin or luteolin, I don't even talk about this, I think I took it out, is not tolerated well. So again, this would be a substitute for that. In Canada, now natural factors, literally there's so many brands, but these are cheaper and they test really good, or when I test them energetically, so they're good enough. In USA, for encapsulation, doesn't have it for Canada, but for USA, if you live in USA, it has pycnogenolone 100 milligrams per cap. Again, you can open an account with USA, but I'm not going to send it here to you. They're going to send it to your clients in USA if you haven't. Licorice. Pay attention, the licorice is fantastic, not fantastic for people who have high blood pressure sometimes. So sometimes it drives even higher than that. This is not DGL. This is not the glycerol licorice. So that glycerol, that's acid, that G acid, that I can never pronounce it, it has to be there because that does the trick. That on what that does and how it works for that inflammatory response to literally wipe out sometimes inflammatory response if you give it enough. It's flipping that Th1, Th2. So the immune balance, the Th2, that's a pro-inflammatory. You probably heard about that talking about COVID. So it's flipping that ratio there. But also inhibits mast cell degranulation. What does it mean? That pretty picture that you saw there, where the histamine get it out of that pinkish whatever cell, that's degranulation. So stuff coming out of it. And decreases also vascular permeability, like cortisol. So it was compared in scientific literature that is actually better. They didn't say that, but it's like at least as good as hydrocortisone. Hydrocortisone has a lot of side effects. So obviously licorice is much better. Pay attention, don't give it too much because a lot of people will have diarrhea. I buy it from BioPure, another company to keep in mind. BioPure is in USA. You can open a practitioner account with them. I know about them because I did a lot of training with Dr. Klingard, if you know who he is, and he developed a lot of their products actually with them. Because Dr. Klingard has sometimes comes to USA to his office there, and he wanted something locally rather than bringing them from UK or Germany. I call Skullcap. This is an interesting one. I don't use it so much unless I buy it from Pure USA. Again, the same company. BioPure. It's not BioPure, it's BioPure USA, by the way. Pay attention that I'm not talking much about it other than protects from neurological inflammation, protects from oxidative stress. For instance, so when people have COVID with neurological symptoms, I gave them this. It is a natural mast cell stabilizer as well. Also, the thing is it deactivates retroviruses, which we all have, by the way. Sometimes those retroviruses, if it's enough mast cell activation there, they're going to be kind of reactivated. And that's an aggravated situation there. Pay attention that you have always, I've seen some, I tried to buy from Amazon a few times, not from BioPure, just not to pay the shipping and all that. And I ended up actually with the wrong, they call it the Skullcap, I call it Skullcap, and actually wasn't. So always look at the Latin name, Scutellaria bicalensis. The other one is Scutellaria latiniflora. It's a cheaper one. American Skullcap, that does not do the same thing. So very, very important to know what to use. Again, backed up by scientific stuff. This is something that I did not know until I did last year. I did about a workshop on mold, and this was part of it. I had no clue that L-theanine and taurine are good actually anti-inflammatories, anti-histaminic. And this is what they are. Like, they stabilize, both of them stabilize cell, mast cells. L-theanine pure encapsulation has it. It's everywhere. Probably you have it in your calming. Maybe it's combined with adaptogens, and that would be fantastic. Adaptogens are good for this as well. So by itself is good as well. So large doses. This is kind of large, 500 milligrams 3 times a day, right? To be effective. Taurine, it's a very interesting one, and I put a lot of information here against the reactive oxidant species, but also something that I had no clue, other than inhibiting the pro-inflammatory cytokines. I had no clue that actually works in the biofilm associated infections as well. So this, I'm starting using now the taurine, not only for calming capabilities, right? Somebody with, nervous system issues, neurological issues, so on, or cannot sleep. For instance, I took before this webinar, by the way, I was a little bit of a high as a kite there, because I work from 6 o'clock in the morning. I was like rushing. I thought, okay, I have to calm something. I have to calm myself down. I took a taurine before the webinar, and worked really well. So again, I'm using this now. I started using this from last year when I researched this. I'm going to use it now for biofilm associated infections as well, right? To not necessarily breaking the biofilm, but it works on the biofilm created by, bad bacteria, pathogenic parasites, and so on. Another one, I don't use this one a lot. I'm not sure why, but from time to time I use it because I can't remember it. Perelia extract. And this one has the ability to modulate the HTH2 cytokines. So especially a tip for you, especially if you have somebody with some either vaccine or from the infection, COVID infection problems, and they remain with a neurologic problem or TH2 cytokine, that is inflammation, is no matter what you do, it's all there. Try Perelia. It works quite well. In Canada, we have it in, unfortunately, very low dose. It's half of the dose that it's found in USA, so they have a different formulation there from the same pure encapsulation. So in Canada, it's combined with NAC. That works and doesn't, because some of my clients, for instance, your clients, will be reactive to sulfur. So pay attention there. And again, you'll have to do a higher dose here for Perelia, 75 milligrams, 2 plus 2 caps. Are you using all of these? Somebody's going to ask me. No, pick and choose. You're not going to give them 20 different supplementation, right? Pick and choose one mast cell stabilizer, another one membrane stabilizer, right? Another one anti-inflammatory, maybe 2 anti-inflammatories, another one that deals with the gut, another one that deals with inflammation, right? So you pick and choose depending on what you trust in your client. Also, interesting enough, that milk thistle and stuff for the liver, it stabilizes the mast cells. I didn't know that either, but I found by just searching to back up some of the other slides, to back up with the science there, I found the science about milk thistle. It's a natural mast stabilizer. It also helps for the liver gallbladder detox. So large doses again, and you may find it in formulas as well. Not recommended for ragweed allergies, so pay attention to that. Stinging nettle. I grew up with stinging nettle tea. So I guess my parents knew one of the things about, I'm pretty sure they didn't think about mast cell activation, but I think did some well stuff in our childhood. But pay attention, if you may, leukotrienes are mediators that often gets triggered from salicylate and phenol sensitivity. And again, works on the mast cells. For lung inflammation, asthma, skin rashes, itching, allergies, may help with irritability and anxiety as well. So you can use it as a tea as well. Not only, actually, is there a tincture? Hold on, never use it as a tincture, it must be. But I use it as a tea, usually 20-minute infusion, so long infusion, very, very concentrated. Drink 1 or 2 cups a day. And even if somebody has, one of your clients or one of the family members has a simple allergy to something, not necessarily mast cell activation, stinging nettle is one of the best things to get rid of that. And by the way, stinging nettle works on the kidneys as well. and on the liver as well. Okay, so I think I'm gonna stop here. I do want, and I'm gonna ask permission from Colleen, and you give me, I do want to talk about the workshop that is coming in February. You tell me when to talk about that. Give me permission to talk about that.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. That was very informative. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge with us, and thank you all our attendees for attending. Sophia does have her workshop coming up. It is a 2-day workshop, 2 Saturdays, February the 4th and the 11th from 9:30 till 3. Sophia's going to share her slides in a second, just to give you a little bit more details about what this workshop actually entails. And if you want to register, you can either call us at the campus at 416-386-0940, or you can send me an email, Colleen@instituteofholisticnutrition.com, or you can register through the website as well. So before we get to the Q&A, I'll just let Sophia quickly share her slides and go over the workshop, and then we'll get to the Q&A, and then we'll do the draw at the end.
Yeah, so don't leave. I know it's 8 o'clock already, and as usual, people who know me, I'm like going overboard. But I really want to listen to you, or not to listen. You're going to listen to me, I guess, to my answers. But I want to answer some of the questions that you have. The workshop is called Extracellular Matrix and Lymphatic System and Health and Disease, and with emphasis on mold exposure. So I talk a lot about mold, but I start with the basic stuff, which is not so interesting enough for the people who took this workshop back in June, July, I believe we had it, July, I believe. They said, oh, wow, I didn't know that extracellular matrix and lymphatic system is so important. So we're going to start with that, because you have to do something with that before you do stuff with mold exposure, even before you do stuff with Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. There's over 10 hours of teaching. There's going to be probably is going to go over that too, but at least 10 hours of teaching. And it's going to be Q&A. We're going to start day number 1 with terrain theory, pleomorphism, or terrain theory. Major stuff about extracellular matrix and lymphatic system. Lymphatic system in the gall, the Paris patches. I'm not sure how many are healing that in your practice, and that's something that you have to do. You have to know about it. Even how to drain that cisterna chyli, which I didn't know much about until some years ago, how important that is, right? So some practical stuff, literally what you do there. The lymphatic system and a lot of practical stuff about how to drain the lymphatic system, how to recognize that that's not working actually, right? How pathology develops in these extracellular matrix and lymphatic system, about a lot of things. Some of them you know, pathogens and so on, but maybe some of them you don't know about, interference fields, for instance, right? Some cavitations and all that stuff, what to do about them. Therapeutic strategies to balance and drain the extracellular matrix and lymphatic system, and there's going to be some fun stuff there, interesting stuff as well, very much practical. Supplementation, lots of them as well. And we're going to start after that about the mold and the sick house syndrome, which is not only mold, it's a lot more than mold. And then we're going to ease into molds and mycotoxins. What are they? What's the difference between mold and mycotoxins? Testing. A lot of you probably do not do that. If you want to test your homes, for instance, or yourself or your clients, where do you do that? Red flags, when to recognize that. That's very important, how to look at the labs. Also, there's some questionnaires that I'm going to share. By the way, I have in the workshop, I just looked before this webinar because I'm going to remember, I think I have like 14 different handouts that are 14 of them that are serving you in your practice. Block detox pathways, because without this, you can't do anything. We've got the block of that. Treatment plans, anything from lifestyle and so on, supplementation. Day 2 is going to be, probably going to spill some of this in day 2, because there's a lot of information. Then 2 is going to be only about mold. Cell danger response. I'm not sure if you got into that, or if you ever heard Dr. Robert Daviau talking about it, the scientist from France. Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. So we're going to see again what he saw today, and that's about that particular chunk. General strategies for mold detox, is a lot of them there. So slides and slides and slides, diet, lifestyle, loads of supplementation with specifics, dosages, where to buy them from, even if you are living in another country. Case study presentation at the very end. So we're going to apply then exactly. We'll see how you get an intake. I'm going to present you the intake, and you're going to help me. Actually, we're going to do it. We're going to try to do it together. What do you think it's going to happen there, and what do we have to do? So all the registrants and all the people who are registering for that, I hope that who registers is going to be live, because it's much more fun to be live than to hear the recording. But you will get, all of you get the recording for both workshop days. Also the whole PowerPoint and all the handouts that I mentioned, which are kind of 14, 15, whatever handout there. So there's a lot of information there. We made it very, very, I have to say that we made it so we got back and forth about the prices. So we made it so affordable. And the one thing that I got from the participants from last year, they said like, oh my God, why was it so cheap? Right? So again, we made it so affordable because we want everybody to be there and everybody to know about this and to apply it in their practice. Thank you, Colleen.
Okay, so we'll go to, so any questions, just put them in the Q&A. Let's see what we have so far. So, okay, I see Nicole has a few questions. So Nicole says, can someone that has mast cell activation syndrome that eventually goes away on its own, like on time without treatment, like if they do a healthier lifestyle diet?
Sorry, say it again. Sorry. That's my problem, that I was reading something else in the chat. So sorry, say it again.
That's okay. So Nicole was asking, if somebody has mast cell activation syndrome, can it go away on its own just through healthy diet and treatment, or like does it ever resolve on its own?
No, never. And I'm telling you why, because the cell membrane is not sturdy enough, so you have to heal that. No, that will never happen. Is it going down? Is it the symptoms are going down when you have 100% follow a low histamine diet? Yes, and actually, it's there's science that says that backs that. Yes, it's going down, but you will never heal it. You start eating again those foods, and unless you want to to be on a very, very specific diet for the rest of your life, you can hold it down, but you're not going to get healed from it, only for the diet. It's like everything else what we do in our practice, right? So like, I don't know, Candida cleanse. A lot of people say, oh, Candida diet is going to heal. No, it's not. It's not going to get rid of the Candida. It's going to bring it down, but you have to break down the biofilm. You have to do a lot of things to clear that out, right?
Okay. So then Nicole also asks, can mast cell activation syndrome be identified via blood work, and what testing should we ask for?
I do not do that, to be honest. I do not do that. You can have the inflammatory markers, but many times inflammatory markers are not even raised. I have had clients that are literally dying from it. And for instance, their high HS CRP was not even elevated. Right? Sometimes you see it in people. It depends if they're cardiovascular disease. You can see things like, erythrocyte sedimentation rate is raised. But you can see that in many other, when they're predisposed to clotting, abnormal clotting and so on. You can see sometimes that. To be honest, I did not get too much into it. The reason is because majority of the stuff, I present a lot more than about that into the workshop, but not specifically for mast cell activation syndrome, because majority of the stuff we cannot do as practitioners, as nutritionists. And I looked actually for extensive list that was in one of the scientific papers that I read, and most of them are not even done in Canada. So they are done in the scientific research clinic or research institute, but majority of them are not done in Canada. So again, a few things that you want to look at, want to look at the, C-reactive protein. HS-C-reactive protein. If that is increased, then yeah, that's a problem, especially in cardiovascular disease, probably. Histamine, you can see the histamine, but again, we can't do that, but the doctor has to do that. You can see the histamine level. You can see that. And then immunoglobulins. So if immunoglobulins are all screwed up, like immunoglobulin M, A, Ag, that you know there is some problem there. You know that it's also it's a gut problem. So you can look at that. But again, it's not something that we can do, right? It's not direct test, it's indirect test to look at the inflammation and some of the mediators, right? And also the good luck with that, but the doctors can check for the Th1 and Th2 ratio there. They can do that as well. So it's inflammatory response, the cytokines, all the cytokines that can be can be done in the blood work. I don't think that is covered by OHIP in Canada, or at least in Ontario, but you can do that. Who's going to do that? I have no clue. I haven't found, to be honest, I looked for somebody who would do that, but I couldn't find. But again, that can be done at, for instance, at hospital level, that can be done.
Okay. This question is kind of, you may have answered part of this along with the other one, but it says, along with understanding the symptoms, can you please go over some key laboratory markers that would suggest MCAS? And then it says,
that's what I just said. Yeah.
Blood cells.
They're not very specific ones, but all of them look at the inflammatory markers and the cytokines. Okay. That's the only thing that you can see there on a lab if the doctor would do that. They're not regularly done, right? So it's not like you go to your, at least in Ontario, don't go to your family doctor, so like, oh, I want my cytokines to be tested. Immunoglobulins, yes, they do that. So immunoglobulins are actually low. I think I said raised. If they're low, then yeah, you have a problem in your immune system, for instance, right? You can see that. So again, a few inflammatory markers, how the blood is clotting, if it's clotting too much, but then again, that could be, side effect of something else that you just got, right?
Okay.
So it's not excluding other things. And it's not there's no markers very specific only for this. This is why practically that's what I started with definition of it. This is one of the reasons why the scientists cannot even, define it, a definition that everybody agrees with, just because they cannot put it in a box. They cannot see, okay, this, these are our 10 types of blood work. And if you have this, then you have Mast Cell Activation Syndrome. So this is part of the detective kind of, work that we do usually.
Okay, so the next question said, should some supplements be avoided? For example, the full flush niacin, which releases prostaglandins. Is this undesirable? Taurine, cysteine, NAC, all sulfur-based. Can MSM be helpful? Is it best to tailor supplements to body systems that are affected, i.e. like the glyceric acid, when symptoms are mainly respiratory or digestive systems?
Yes and no. So the very specific ones were the only ones studied for the mast cell activation. So you're talking about NAC, for instance. So I said it actually in one of the slides that NAC actually can be worse because some people, for instance, have the sulfation pathway as part of the methylation system. Sulfuration pathway actually blocked. And when you give them something with sulfur like MSM and NAC, they react even worse, right? So it really has to be really customized, right? So again, NAC is not part of the mast cell activation. I just gave one of the, I think it was Pistrila. This was one, it just happened that particular supplement from Canada, from Pure Encapsulation, has NAC in it. But I just said it even on the slide that your person may kind of react from that. So really pay attention. I have right now two people that are two of my clients, one of them from Europe, one of them from here. I figure out that they react to everything sulfurous, even for sulfurous foods. So they react to everything. So one of them for sure has mast cell activation, but he told me the reacts. He did finally the journal. So he said, okay, I'm reacting to broccoli, I'm ready to cabbage, I'm ready to everything sulfurous. So I said, okay, how do you react to NAC? I just gave you NAC. So, I'm reacting to something terrible. I'm not sure what. Okay, take NAC out. and it was the NAC. So again, it has mast cell activation. We do the phosphatidylcholine. We do all kind of other things like high DHA to stabilize the cell membrane and some of the anti-inflammatories. But that NAC really threw him off, and threw me off because instead of getting better, he was getting worse. Right? So again, it's very customized. A NAC is not specific for cell mass activation syndrome and can make it worse if they react to sulfur. And somebody doesn't react, yeah, it can be okay. So it really has to be customized. Other things, again, there are things that usually people react to. Anything that is ragweed, right? Feverview, some people react to it. So in theory, if you have mast cell activation syndrome, even if you have, simple allergies, you can react to anything. So you don't react to, you don't react from all kind of herbs that I think you should react to, and then you react to something that, to nettle. There are some people who react to nettle. Right? So it really has to be customized. That's why the journal, it really, really helps you and your client as well.
Okay.
So there's also something else. When you introduce supplements, so when somebody has mast cell activation syndrome, introduce one at a time. Every 3 days is going to be like a long process until you introduce the whole protocol. Introduce one at every 3 days. So if they took something like digestive enzymes before, that's fine. So they still continue taking that. But if you introduce PC, introduce it, and then 3 days later, you introduce something else. 3 days later, because you want to see the reaction. If you introduce two all at the same time, you have no clue what they react to. So be it, again, a detective.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then this is the last question that we have. Do you have a testing preference for either 23andMe and Ancestry for genetic testing? And is genetic testing the best way for MCAS?
No, genetic testing is not from SCAs. So it's not for that. So I just gave an example that if you have a specific gene glitch, a SNP it's called, right? The MAO enzyme. You don't have them to don't make the MAO enzyme. So we should make that. So some people are born without that thing, or they make too little MAO enzyme, right? Or they don't make it at all. That means that it's going to make the whole thing worse. That means that you are predisposed genetically to have mast cell activation syndrome, right? So again, if you not everybody has it, I don't know. I haven't seen a statistic how many people have it. First, MTHFR, there are 45% of the population has it. We know that. There are a lot of studies on that. MAO, I don't know how many people have it. I did have 1 or 2 clients who have that. I did the 23andMe and me. They took a lot, unfortunately, in the last years. They took a lot of the stuff out. Stuff that was good, but it's still, I think it's good. There's some other companies offering it. Dr. Ben Lynch offers one from on his website, but I can't remember his normal website. It's another one. And he offers his own one. The good thing about 23andMe is that they have, I think I paid $150 US, so it's very cheap. They do a good job on it. The only bad thing about it is that there are rumors that they're selling it to different, your genetic codes, they're selling it to different pharma companies for different research. They make money on your genetic code. You have, when you sign for it or when you give, on the papers, you can we have an option to ask you, do you want your genetic stuff to be used in research or not? And I put no, I don't want, because I don't want whatever to be traced down to me and stuff like that. So again, there's a lot of, in Canada specifically, we don't have in USA, there are some laws. In Canada, there are not too many laws that protect us from that genetic code, for instance, that to get into the hands of somebody who will profit from that, or to ban me for having a job or ban me to do practice or whatever. So in Canada, it's very lax into protection from that genetic testing. So keep that in mind and take the risk if you want to take a risk. That's all. So again, from mast cell activation syndrome, there is no specific genetic testing other than MAO. And if you don't have that, that means that you're predisposed to that. And probably you have the mast cell activation syndrome. You still can have mast cell activation syndrome. Majority of people have it. with not having that glitch in the MAO enzyme. That's kind of short version.
Okay. So that was all the questions. So now we'll go on to the draw. So this draw we're going to do is a 1.5-hour Zoom meeting with Sofia. So it can be a consultation, or if you're in practice already, it can be like you can go over one of your clients with you and she can help you assess your client. And it's valued at over $225. So I put everybody's names into a little bowl here. So I'm just going to draw one name. And the person has to be actually still on the call. So I'm just going to quickly draw a name and we'll see whose name comes up. So this one the winner is Nicole O'Neill. Let's see.
Nicole O'Neill?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's just see. Hopefully she's still on the call. Oh yeah, she's still on the call. So, so Nicole, why don't you just put your email in the chat, and then I'll connect you with Sofia afterwards on how you can claim your prize. So we want to thank you all for coming, and yeah, thank you, Sofia, for sharing all your knowledge with us.
Thank you for sticking with me for an hour and a half here, or almost an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Usually longer than it should have been, but it's yeah. Thank you for being here. I hope you get at least some ideas. Come to the workshop and you'll find a lot more. But if you come to the workshop, be prepared with some CoQ10 and some carnitine and some stuff to keep your energy up. I know that I take a lot of it while I do the workshop, talking for so many hours. And I promise you have a good time and lots of knowledge for sure. It took me years and years to amass that knowledge, and I'm going to share with you in 2 days. There you go. So advantage you there. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you, Sofia.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.